All right, this week we are reading in Luke chapter 4, and I guess if we want to talk about the whole chapter, it's the ministry of Jesus, an
Yeah,
introduction
right.
to the ministry of Jesus. So, if you want to put a framework around chapter 4, your first 13 verses are going to be the temptation. It's
Right.
kind of where we get coming out of the genealogy from chapter 3
Right.
into the temptation in chapter 4. And you may find some places there to pose some questions for us. Our question night's going to be next Sunday night
Right.
about the text.
Luke 1
And
through 4, all four chapters.
yeah, from all four chapters. And so if you want to pose, we're going to have a few questions, but pose some questions about the temptations. There's certainly a lot that we could spend some time working with there. Then, picking up in verse 14, you're going to find two verses that give us kind of a summary statement, 14 and 15, about how Jesus gets started. And then picking up at 16, the chapter finishes up basically with two pieces in two places.
Right.
Nazareth and Capernaum.
Right.
So we have Nazareth, his hometown, and basically there we see his teaching and responses to it. In fact, two different responses from the same audience.
Right.
And then on to Capernaum, which is where we see his miracles. So don't miss the interplay between the teaching and the miracles in the two cities, because
Right.
in Capernaum we kind of have this collection of miracles, briefly,
Right.
that sort of illustrate that facet of his ministry.
Yeah, no, it's really, David. I think the whole text kind of revolves around this coming of the kingdom of God that Jesus is here to bring. You know, to your point, coming out of the genealogies, when Luke identifies Jesus not just as a son of David or even a son of Abraham, but as a son of Adam, and then he's immediately tempted. It reminds you kind of the Garden of Eden, only now the garden is a wilderness. Man's sin and God's curse. The earth is not the beautiful place it was when he created it back in Genesis 1 and 2. And so now Jesus is tempted. Ironically, the first temptation has to do with eating, just like the temptation in the garden was. And we could talk about that next week as well. That's an interesting conversation. Anyways, Jesus successfully overcomes Satan's temptations where the first Adam did not. This son of Adam does. And that sets up then his declaration of the kingdom of God, that he has come to restart reality, to save the human race, and to drive Satan back. That's why it's so important. He preaches that sermon from an Isaiah text that declares the kingdom of God, which is liberation of the captive and the weak and the vulnerable. And then what does Jesus start doing? The things that you're going to see him do are, number one, driving out demons. He drives out a couple of different demon-possessed people in this. In other words, he's continuing his war on Satan and driving Satan out, and he's healing people. He's helping people recover from the effects of a fallen world, which is not just bodily illness, but ultimately represents sin itself. And so that's the idea, is that Jesus is almost God on the march, reclaiming territory from Satan, driving demons out, healing people, releasing the captives, so to speak. The kingdom of God has been launched.
And what's great, especially this last section here, is you have sort of in brief a picture of the whole ministry.
That's right.
This is
A summary.
This is what
Yeah.
Jesus does. So enjoy that as you're reading in Luke chapter 4 this week, and next Sunday night we'll look forward to taking some questions.